Hey everybody, this is me, JJSF 1987. I am a writer and blogger, as you can tell. I have been doing this for over 10 years or so, and anyway, so yeah, you can see if you want to check out my works, you can go to my blog at jjsf1987.com, and you can also help to support this channel on Patreon at patreon.com/jgsf1987. Anything you can do would you can contribute would be really sweet. All right, so here's the thing: the Republicans are in a lot of trouble. Part of what part of what's gotten them in a real bind is the fact that they have one of the Democrats who was interviewing Fiona Hill yesterday read into the record a number of lies by Devin Nunes, who is the ranking member for the House Permanent Select Permanent, well, the House Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence. I mean, this just keeps getting better and better. I mean, think about this. So Devin Nunes being caught is really not should really not be news to anybody. I mean, yeah, it's good that they made a record of that, but still, it still doesn't change the fact that the Republicans, no matter what they do at this point, are screwed. And it doesn't really matter at this point what Russia does, because let me tell you something. Putin, as I've said before on this in videos on this channel, Putin is screwed. He's the he's the most screwed out of everybody. Trump has Putin by the balls, more or less. And the reason why I'm saying that is Trump has enough leverage with some of the oligarchs that if they start growing, because Trump can very easily revoke all their franchises if they piss him off. And when he does that, that's going to cause a lot of chaos in Russia, and it's going to get the oligarchs grumbling. And when the oligarchs start to grumble, you know you're in trouble. So it really doesn't matter at this point. Now, I don't think the Senate. Here's what I'm going to say. I think that some Republicans in the Senate will break ranks and put the country ahead of their party. I do think that is going to happen. However, I don't think enough of them will necessarily do so, which is unfortunate. But I don't think there's going to be enough crossover Republicans to basically remove Trump from office. Now, I read on I think it was either The Hill or whatever. I'll see if I can find that article or and such. that basically said that the House of Representatives could give as many as 5 different articles of impeachment, possibly 3 or 4, maybe up to 5. And they have very strong evidence that they'll be able to give to the Senate and the Republicans in the Senate. Of course, they're going to ignore many of them are going to ignore all the evidence to the cows come home. So, and when that happens, oh boy, everybody is going to be. It's going to be very difficult for them to try to. But I think for some of them, it's really going to be very hard to refute it. But what does this do to? My question next is, okay, once I go through impeachment, and then trial for removal and whatnot. My next question is, what do we do next? And as I've said before, we need to tackle the root problems that got Trump elected president to begin with. But I'll save that for a different video, because that's not the point of that. In particular, is not the point of the video. The point of the video is that the impeachment process, I think, just by the processions, Trump is going to get impeached. That is a very well established fact. He is going to get impeached. He's not going to get removed. But I do think that enough Republicans will cross over. I don't think enough Republicans are going to cross over, but I do think some will. And I think going into next year's election, regardless if he is acquitted of all the charges within the impeachment articles, even if he's cleared of all of it, the fact is the Republicans are going to go into it with a much weakened. They're going to go into next year with a very weak hand, because the evidence that's there is so irrefutable. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Republicans are, when they get their, let me put it this way, when the Republicans recognize the fact that they have been caught like they have right now. But the point of the impeachment trial that I've said before, this is not specifically about Trump, or it's not entirely about Trump. A lot of it is about him, but most of it, I would say that's about, I don't know, maybe about 40% of it is about Trump. Another 50% is about the Republican Party at large. And then the other 10% is all the other benefactors that have had contacts with outside powers and such, included to try to get him in. The other has to do with 10% of it is corporate America, which is really going to be, who is right now, they're shaken down to their core. 50% of it is about the Republican Party. 10% of it is about all the corporate heads who have been basically bought the government off. And 40%, the last 40% is about Trump, as I said before. The 50% that's about the Republican Party. Ooh. Oh yeah, that is. That is going to be very, very. That's going to get them into a bind that they're not going to be able to get out of. It doesn't matter how the Republicans choose to spin all these proceedings, and then whatever. It doesn't matter. The problem is they're going to go into next year basically fully exposed for having lied to the American people and to the electorate for, I would say, close to 50 years. I think people have finally woken up to that. They can't put this genie back in the bottle no matter how hard they try. Because people really, really, really don't like being lied to. And who can blame them? But that's what the Republicans have been doing for 50 years. The Republicans have been colluding with outside powers to stay in power, outside, to foreign actors, just to obtain, attain, and maintain power. That's how they've been doing it, is with outside powers for the past 50 years. If you go back to every president, every Republican president who has been running for office, or let me put it this way, just about every incumbent Republican president, every Republican president who was, managed to get into office and then was able to stay in office in some form or another. And that is only one of the last 6 Republican presidents did not collude with an outside power. Every Republican president had done so with one massive exception. That would be Gerald Ford. Ford did not collude with an outside power. I'm not saying that Dole didn't, but let me put it this way. Dole was first of all, Dole was one of those candidates who just Dole's name alone was able to sustain him. He didn't, even though he lost in '96, but he was he was the challenging candidate. But the ones who I'm talking about that but if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, all but 2 candidates for Republican candidates for president, all but 2 of the Republicans nominees for president colluded with an outside power. And those were the 2 names on the Republican ticket in 1976. Gerald Ford and Robert Dole. Those were the only 2 Republican candidates in the last 50 years to not have any kind of outside collusion. Does this mean that the Democrats are innocent? Not at all. I'll go through that in a different video because that's not the point of this one. And I know I kind of went off on a small tangent with the other things, so I'm sorry. So, anyway, back to the other point, though, is that but basically every other Republican that is okay. Of the last five Republican candidates who successfully captured a term in the who were able to capture control of who were able to take the presidency. The last five Republican presidents, when they got into office, all five of them, with the exception of Gerald Ford, you see, five of the last six Republican presidents got in by colluding with a foreign power or with a foreign actor. It was Richard Nixon with this, with the North Vietnamese in 1968, and some help from the Chinese in the 1972. There was Ronald Reagan with Iran in 1980, and Iraq in 1984. Iran and Iraq in both 1980 and 1984. China and North Vietnam for Richard Nixon in 1968 and 1972. The Bushes with Saudi Arabia. The Sultan that George Herbert Walker Bush was elected into office back in 1988. And then when George Walker Bush was elected into office in both 2000 and 2004. And then you have Trump, well, more specifically, Trump's surrogates and the Russians doing so in 2016. That's not just, but I would argue it's not just the Russians, it's also the Chinese and any other nation that is deemed an adversary for our country. They all wanted to make sure that Trump got in because they knew that Hillary was way too dangerous. That was a fact not lost on them. And it was a fact not lost on much of the electorate either. Hillary was just simply too dangerous to be president. She didn't belong in the White House. Not, not at all. Now, this doesn't mean that Trump belongs in the White House because he really doesn't either. I do think that while he may say that, well, he's only partially right in saying that impeachment is going to strengthen him in next year's election. That's going to, in the sense, the only way that he would be right is it is going to be through his lock on the Republican Party's base. He currently has a 90% lock on the Republican base, which makes it so this way the Republicans, even if they want to break with him, they can't. So that's part of why they're acting the way they're acting. They're scared shitless right now. That's how, and this is why throughout the impeachment hearings, and they're going to be trying to do everything they can to shut this down, or to basically make the Democrats look like they're the aggressors. Here's what I'm going to tell you: any of them trying to deflect or change the subject, let me tell you something. If they make any kind of deflecting, ad hominem or straw man arguments, don't take them into account. The Republicans have no defense for what just happened. They know they can't defend the indefensible. Just like they know that they cannot cross the road base. I think that that should, once Trump gets thrown out of office, I don't think he's going to get thrown out of office by Congress. I think he will get voted, but I do think he'll get thrown out of office by the voters because they don't have any more patience for him and his antics. That's, I think, what's going to end up happening is that he's going to go into 2020 with a very weak hand. Now, he may be saying that, oh, like, well, he's stronger, and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say this right now. Take that with a grain of salt. He's in a very weak position right now. And he's in real serious denial about it. Anyway, since I know I've been talking for over 20 minutes here, I'm going to kill it. So, I'm JGSF 1987. If you like what you see on here, give a like, and also share this video, and of course subscribe to this channel. And here we go. Anyway, I'm JGSF 1987, and I am out of here.